Then we get the plan of care completed. Dawn then calls the patient?
Dawn's going to call the patient to ensure that their plan of care has been reviewed, because once that happens, she will tell somebody on the case to have the patient electronically sign the plan of care. There's a patient signature on the bottom of the plan of care to electronically sign the plan of care to confirm that it has been reviewed. That's one of the new conditions of participation. The plan of care must be signed by the patient to agree that we've all reviewed our plan and our goals with them. Then we are going to mail it certified mail to the patient, or whatever receipt. So we have a receipt in the chart that we have mailed it to the patient with a letter that tells them to put it in their admission book. We thought about this many different ways, and we didn't want to put the burden on the staff to have to print it and bring it to the patient's home. So we thought it would be best if we handled it at the office and sent it so that we had a receipt. So if we were questioned by auditors, that we can say that here it is signed electronically, here it is mailed, here's the receipt. So they're going to question it. And they're going to question all the patients on surveys. If it was reviewed with them, they understand their care plan, they understand their goals. So that's one of the conditions. And just be aware that the conditions of participation for Medicare have not been changed in over 15 years, because I started the company 15 years ago, and they have not changed since before I started the company. So this is a big deal. They're going to be on top of all of these. Consent.
The consent in Devero is still being updated. It's not the correct consent yet, but the problem that we have now is every active patient that has a consent in their book does not have the correct consent. So we have to get all new consent signed for every active patient right now.
Okay, because the consent adds just that one phrase that it adds. And what is that phrase? Because you stamped it on every single one.
I have no idea what it is. I haven't even looked at it. I just
But you stamped it on every one, right?
Yeah, everyone gets a stamp of just one additional number for the Bill of Rights.
It's their Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights, by the person opening the case, must be reviewed with the patient, and surveyors are going to quiz them on their Bill of Rights. Do you understand your Bill of Rights? Was it reviewed with you by your clinician?
Mm-hmm.
Is that all on the eval of the PT?
This is all in the case open.
Yes.
That's on the
So I
consent
won't
form.
have to do that.
No.
So it's on the back of the oh no, it's
it's
a
on
second page now.
Yeah.
It's a second page now.
And then
okay.
the electronic
They have to
one
initial it.
will
They have
be
to initial
updated.
review.
That's okay. And then with the consent, I'll just jump into this real quick. In the consent, there's going to be a change with the discharge part. When you go in to do your consent, you know how you're checking off whichever insurance it is. We found out that there's Medicare Advantage plans that require different documentation. So when you're going in on that case open, look at the insurance before you walk in that door. You have got to see if it says Medicare Advantage on the insurance plan. If you don't understand it, ask, because the form has changed. And the Medicare Advantage plans now need a whole different form than what we're used to getting for discharge. So there's a form called a NOM-NOC.
And that was what I sent out in the weekly, that chart that hopefully is clear to everybody, because the NOM-NOC has to be for agency discharge for Medicare's and Medicare Advantages.
Right.
Not
So-
discipline discharge, full agency discharge. So the last person in has to do the NOM-NOC. And as far as the consent, I don't think there's anything else on that. Medication review, as you've all seen, the new medication profile. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention too was, I know this sounds like a lot to do. So what my suggestion is, because I know you all have limited time and you're getting paid for your time, and I'm not. So, but I would say it's up to your discretion. Add 2 PRN visits onto your care plan every time for review of emergency planning, for review of care plan, for all of that. Add 2 PRN visits. When you write your orders, there's a spot that says PRN visits, and that goes for the episode. And if you put 2 in there, you will have extra visits for yourself. So if there's orders for 3 times a week for PT, you can do a 4th visit that week for education, for that kind of stuff. Do 1 or 2 exercises because it's you're billing for a skilled physical therapy visit, but focus the visit on what you need to do to review that stuff so that you're not stuck in the house for 2 hours doing this and so that was kind of my solution for this. However, I'm one person and I can't check every single plan of care that you wrote those PRN visits and I refuse to continue to write people's orders in for them. So it's going to be up to the case manager that opens the case to make sure you put these PRN visits if you want to get paid for your time to do this. Okay? For drug regimen review, you can all see the med profiles different. You are responsible for filling out all those questions, yes or no, to all those questions and putting comments. The surveyor told me today, any major drug interaction needs to have a medication discrepancy tool. I tried to explain to her that suppose the patient's on medication for 40 years, the same 2 medications, and it comes up as a major. She didn't care. She said, do you want to get sued if something happens? Do you want to cover your own butt? I said, sure, I want to cover my own butt. So she said, then do a medication discrepancy tool. So it's called the MDT. It's a medication discrepancy tool. Is it in the PT menu? I think it's in everybody's menu. It's in everybody's menu. And it's just a simple form that says, these are the interactions I found when you run the interaction checker. Moderates and minors, don't worry about. Just majors.
Is
As
everyone
Dawn
doing this
knows-
on the case?
Well, the interaction check, again, the person that opens the case is the case manager. So they are responsible for interactions. They are responsible for that. However, if a medication is added later, whenever a medication is added, you must run the interaction checker again, answer those yes-no questions again, make your comments. If an interaction comes up at that time with the new medication that was just added, it's your responsibility to add it. And she said she is tired of hearing people's excuses that I'm a PT, I'm not responsible for that. She said if you do home care, you're responsible for the whole patient. There's no excuses. The agency can get sued, and, you know, it's my butt on the line, nobody else's here.
But that's only
So,
for major interactions.
That's for major,
Yeah, the
right,
red.
exactly.
Okay.
You know, and she's right
Make
in the
sure I'm
sense
right.
that it's a very, you know, our country has gotten very sue happy, and
That's for
unless
sure.
we cover our butts, then, you know, we can end up being in
So in
trouble.
that case, then what happens? Then the doctor is called and.
It's a medication discrepancy tool, so you just fill it out and send to office, and they just fax it to the doctor.
Okay.
It's on the
It's
doc-
just an FYI. It's
Oh.
not. They don't have to sign it, right?
So
it's just an
it's,
FYI.
it's, I guess, kind of up to. Sometimes they ask for the doctor to address it. Sometimes they don't. The nurse.
Right. So you can check off a box that says, you know,
I
please
think-
address.
Right. Or and you can always, if you need to put like a note in there that
It's not mine.
ask the doctor for signature or ask the doctor to contact us. You know, to tell us
Basically,
what
our
to do.
job is to tell you, and you'll follow up with
Right.
the doctor.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's kind of. the way to-
Yeah, it's. And I did have a long discussion with her while we were driving about indications, and I said, I don't feel comfortable putting in an indication for a medication if it's say it's a fluid, you know, it's something that can be used for blood pressure or CHF. Her answer to that was, if they have a diagnosis of CHF, put CHF as the indication. And I said, well, what if they have a diagnosis of both? She said, put both diagnoses in there. CHF/blood pressure. Just match them up with the diagnoses. That was her answer. So I'm a little bit, I don't know, like I just want to say mechanism reduces fluid kind of thing, like I said on the weekly.
She's saying that.
She's saying match them up with diagnoses.
But that makes sense because, like, even where I'm at, every medication we have to have a diagnosis
Right.
for. And if we don't have just say somebody's on thyroid medicine and they don't have a hypothyroid, we have to get that hypothyroid diagnosis.
You have to,
They have to match.
right, and that was her whole thing, that when you look at your
There's sticklers
indications
on
and
that.
your diagnoses, that they should match.
Sometimes they're given for different diets.
That's what I told her.
Yeah.
That's what I told her. And I said, and sometimes it'll say a couple different ones. And she said,
Doctor, what are you giving it to him for?
Then
Well,
you don't know
oh.
which doctor prescribed it. It's
then
just
she
not
said,
really running
ask the
through.
patient.
Oh,
They don't
yeah.
know.
I said,
That's
They
not
have no
gonna work.
idea.
Right.
are you kidding me?
They don't know. They don't even know they're taking it.
They say, I don't know. She said,
All
well,
the
most,
time.
most of your patients should know what they're on medications for. Well, aren't we? Wait,
should.
I'm like,
When did
hold
she
on.
do a
Step
patient
back a
visit
second.
last?
Aren't you telling me that we have to teach the patients what they're on? Now you're telling me to ask the patient what they're on? What kind of sense does this make?
Yeah, right. Contradicts itself. Oh.
Oh, you have no idea.
She hasn't been on a visit for a while.
So,
Patients are used.
Exactly.
yeah. Patient representative. a patient selected family member.
So-
So in the OASIS, when it asks for the
So
representative,
there's a whole different role now that they've created, the patient representative. So you have your power of attorneys, let's say. You have the patient. The patient now, before it was always, you could talk to the patient or to the power of attorney. You couldn't talk to anybody else unless the patient said you could. Now there's this representative who could be anybody in the world that the patient wants to be their person that receives information. So the representative, the POA, and the patient are all supposed to have copies of the consents, the discharge notifications, the plan of cares.
oh, I forgot about that one.
That's why I said, oh boy, because so did I. And the discharge summary.
We didn't put that. We have to put that in the next.
Wow.
So essentially what would happen is if you guys send in, as I see these things coming through, it will prompt me to send it to them, but you guys need to have a conversation with the representative, the power of attorney, and the patient. I can send them the copy once I see it come in my end, but you guys have to have that conversation with them to notify them.
Who's the representative?
The representative is anybody that the patient wants. It could be their next door neighbor. They don't have to have a representative, but if they choose one,
But you have to talk to the POA too?
the POA, the representative, and the patient.
So when we send, so okay, we have to devise a policy in the office for that. So basically,
It's just
you
that.
guys are going to have to be mailing out to anybody on the chart that's POA, caregiver. Oh, and you have to send copies of the plan of care to every physician on too, right? Their endocrinologist,
If that doctor is involved,
okay.
but
we have to
run into that with
yeah.
medication, so we have to
Yeah.
see what to do.
So plan of care has to go to all physicians involved.
I don't.
That's a little far-fetched.
Oh, a lot of it's a little
Most
more.
POA lives in Virginia.
So they'd like
We mail it.
essentially you to have.
I mean, how would I
They'd
have
like
a
within
conversation
2
with them?
visits of start of care
Or that's not me?
You could put
to
the
call to the
name
power of attorney.
and phone number. Our office can call and get the
basically
address and mail.
everything you told
Okay.
the patient needs to be
do
told to
that.
the power of attorney.
I don't have any
As soon as we find out who it is, like, is that something we get from the
So,
patient profile? Or we have
We try to find out on the office end, but we get pushback sometimes where it's, I'll give it to the clinician when they come out to the house. A lot of times you'll get the power. of
On the
attorney.
OASIS, there's a section.
There
It
is.
says patient representative, and you can fill it in with the name and number. You can always call the phone number, get the address. So I think that's going
Or
to be
their
part of our
preferred
policy.
method. You're right. Their preferred
the
method
office.
of communication.
We're going to
whatever
have to
it may
check that. You're going to have to check that page of the OASIS
be. Yeah.
on all.
So you're, we try to get it at intake, the power of attorney, but sometimes they just, I have it somewhere. I'll give it to them when they come, and then I ask you guys to get it for me. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to push a little bit.
Say, if I'm going in as an OT, I have to call each of these people and tell them what the OT part of the plan of care is?
Mm-hmm.
They all have to call
Technically, that's what we're supposed to be doing, is reviewing the plan of care with everybody involved. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the condition.
One of the things that we run
participation,
into a
but
lot of times.
That's why I said have a whole visit for it,
Yeah.
because
Big picture of it all. I can't tell you how many times a patient has gone into a hospital and they discharge out to a whole different home care, and they're like, "Well, I had these other people. Where's Marissa at?" Well, the child didn't even know that we were involved. So how can we? This way, we're letting everybody know, like, we're there. We're taking care of things. We want you to be involved and help. I think if you look at the big picture of the care and everything, I think
it makes sense
It
in
makes
that
sense,
respect.
yeah.
Because we'll retain patients
it's
if
extra work, but
the person who's cognitively aware of what's going on knows that we're in
there's
the
other
house.
people, right? Exactly.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. Documentation, as we get used to the notes and they become easier, I think, I think it's going to be easier to fill them out, because now with the check boxes and you just hit on the red box, all the gray areas are basically, I think of those gray boxes as a view into the plan of care. It's like a peephole into the plan of care, basically. You're clicking on it, and that's exactly what the plan of care looks like, and you're checking off what you did based on the plan of care. So if the PT writes certain things, when that PTA clicks on that interventions, they can only choose from what the PT wrote on their plan of care for their interventions. Goals, they're clicking on goals. They're only seeing what the PT wrote, and they're writing their status. As far as the percent, I'm sure you guys all saw that the PT's only in RNs, if it's a PTA or LPN, not to write percentage. towards it, just because I don't want to look inconsistent, and it's more of an overall assessment kind of deal. So
And if there's goals and different treatments or interventions or whatever that you constantly are using, let me know. I can put them in.
they can be put in as
Waste your time
Pre-written.
putting in and stuff. I know that you have a couple goals that you like to use. Just send them to me. Just send them to me, and then I just upload them in, and they'll be in your library, your template.
So if we don't address a goal on that visit, like, 'cause there's 10 goals. Like,
we're going to make all the fields managed. So that's the next step in the programming with Devera, because they had to strip our whole site. So now they're building it. So the next step is I just sent them a whole document on all the fields I want to be mandatory. All the status fields are going to be mandatory. You can put NA or not tested that day. And the instructions I say is, don't just address one goal and put NA for the rest of them. If you address 3 goals and you put not tested for the other ones, that's fine. But you want to make it look like a full note. So,
Now, if we don't test it, do you want us to put, like, is it okay not
on
to-
the status part where it says status.
Yeah, but do we have to then go back and put, like, not tested due to time, or?
If I think it always looks better that you write a reason, like you can
What do
say
you want? Do you want that under interventions or under the?
with the status.
Okay.
Yeah, right with the status, you can just put, if it's a stair goal and they're not doing steps yet, you can just put not tested patient, not ready
able.
for steps yet, or not no
Put a
endurance for
reason
steps.
Yeah, put a
Right.
reason.
And like I suggested to people with the PTs and things like that, is put 3 or 4 goals in on start of care. You don't have to put 10 goals. Then as they reach those goals and you start to see it getting toward 100%, then add more. Because you can always add goals in. So it makes more sense that you're not having to write something on the status for goals that are written for 2 months from now.
So we can just do short-term goals and add in long-term goals.
Right. Add them as you go. This way it makes your
Like,
about
oh my God, I just
faster.
lost 3 hours.
No, it makes your
Long-term,
about
I'm doing the same
faster.
thing.
And then it also makes you be able
So
to
we write
justify
2 weeks
care.
goals, met those, then.
Right, then it
Same
justifies your
thing.
care as you go
Ways to
along. Because, like, if now they're at a tug of, say they're at a tug of 40 seconds, now it says 100%. Okay, reach that 100%. Now make their tug 20 seconds and add it, after they get to their 100% achievement on that goal. If they're not ready for steps for a month, don't write steps on your eval. So then you won't have to address it every time. Wait till they get to their ready for steps and then put it in.
That would make it so much easier.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of
So we can just have a couple goals or focus just
3 or
right now.
4.
Yeah, because it's like 12.
I mean, yeah, I would say, functional, and relate the goals to why they have to do it. Their bathroom is 50 feet from where they sit in their recliner, so to get up at night, and go to the bathroom, they need to, so make them functionally oriented, based on what they, Will was great today with the 10-inch, you knew that the tub was 10 inches, so he has to lift his leg, or what did you say, it was almost a foot, or
Yeah.
so actually having that in your goal, like I measured how high the tub is, and this is how high they have to lift their leg, and now they can only lift it 5 inches, so I still need to keep them. Like it's, and that justifies keeping them a lot. No changes.
So one more thing, for the interventions, we only have to pick the ones we're addressing that day. We don't have to click on all of them.
On your eval, you have to do
Yeah,
all of
but
them.
for our daily notes. we
For
can
your
pick-
daily
okay.
note, you just pick what you did that day. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because the eval, you're talking about the interventions through the whole care plan. And as the surveyor was telling me today, we're not allowed to take a pulse ox without an order. We're not allowed to take a blood pressure without an order. So we're going to be written up on that, but we're going to add a section in the plan of care that I'll probably end up just putting in on all of them, which is all skilled services will
we'll
assess.
add a template in, and
We'll-
you guys can all click off on the template.
Yeah, they can click
'Cause
off on.
we can't.
That's true.
we
If we
cannot
try to do it,
manipulate
we're
that
not going to be able to
plan
do
of
It's
care.
going to be
everything.
blood pressure and heart rate, not respiration.
I think blood pressure, heart rate, respirations, that's what the state always looks at.
So we can put that in the intervention, and then.
We're going to make a section, she's going to make a template that says all skilled services shall assess. And then this way, you can just check off the box at the top, and it'll check off all of them, and it'll go into every plan of care.
But
So-
it's on
But
the
don't we
OASIS,
have one?
So wouldn't it?
It has, in order to be orders, it has to be on the plan of care.
Yeah, but the OASIS populates into the plan of care.
Yeah.
Where
if
is it
there's
on
one
the
on the
Oasis?
Oasis,
Is that
if
with-
you don't
with the
have
heart
strict
rate
parameters, you
and-
can
That's
check.
not populating anymore. It used to. It's
Oh,
not
where
anymore.
we
I
do-
noticed it.
Where
yeah,
we do the vitals?
it's not populating anymore.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Oh, wow.
The only things that populate in the plan of care now are those gray boxes. Anything in a gray box
Correct. Anything in a gray box
goes to
will
the plan of
populate
care,
over.
right? There's nothing
Okay.
else that's going.
Anytime you have to click that red link, it's the plan.
You're
of care.
linking to the plan of care, basically.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that used to go over for a while, and then it
Yeah.
stopped. Yeah, it's almost like a standard order that used to go over, but
Exactly.
when they made the revisions, it stopped going over. So now, of course, it stops right when the Joint Commission comes.
Of course.
So they
I
get
told
to
you
tell
they
me
were coming-
that it's
I thought They were
wrong.
coming on the day the COP switched.
Yeah,
Wow.
and
They
certain
can't.
things still weren't
Crazy.
carried in. And I said, well, it's the new module, so yeah.
We're getting there. Slowly but surely.
That's okay.
I got
If
the
If
Well,
they
rubber there
didn't pick
the
you
first
on that,
Saturday.
they'd have picked on you on something else. So
So
Are they
and
done now? Are they done?
tomorrow they'll be back, yeah. And I gave bad instruction on this because with the pulse ox, they don't want us using it without an order. My last surveyor told me we weren't allowed to use them if they're bought by the individual. This surveyor is saying it's fine for individuals to use them as long as you have an order. So I told her the other lady's name, so she's going to investigate that.
Maybe she was on a roll
What if the
today.
patient?
Oh, I was done. I was done.
Can you put like it's the patient's like without
That's
an order?
okay.
You can say this is the patient's. This is
Yes.
what it read. Okay.
Without an order, you
Yep.
can, the patient can put it on their own finger. As soon as you touch that device and you use it on the patient, you need an order for it.
but I could document like on
It
if a husband puts it on his wife's finger.
right.
I
Oh
could
yeah,
document
that's
that.
fine. But like,
Oh.
if you put a Band-Aid on a patient, you need an order for it.
You should see what some of these wound care orders look like.
Oh yeah, Jim's pretty good about that. He writes adhesive strip,
I love when
He
I call
writes
Blue
what?
Cross and they're like,
adhesive strip.
that's a band.
Band-Aid.
I know what it is.
And then I said to the Joint Commission surveyor actually today, I was like, do you realize that Joint Commission thinks we're committing fraud by putting Band-Aids on our patients because that's on all of our orders? And now you're telling me that So it's like,
That's why I stay in the office and don't
Yeah.
go out on the road with these people.
Blue Cross will ask us, why are you documenting that? It's not a wound.
That's a Band-Aid.
And then she's saying, you need to document every single thing. Yeah, so we kind of have to figure it out. The orders, anybody having issues with the orders? The new order form? Basically, there's that physician communication spot where you can write communications with the physician. But, basically, if you take a verbal on the phone, which we're trying to avoid, Dave's suggestion is tell them to send a script. Don't take a verbal.
That's kind of what I just send me a script.
Because it
Based
gets a
off
little,
that,
you
let
have
me
to
go-
document time and date and everything if you take a verbal, and it
Let
has
me
to be
go
exactly
into
read back
the schedule thing real quick because you were just mentioning the order.
the schedule. And then I want to mention what Dawn brought up too.
So, when you're doing your frequencies, it's going to be confusing because you guys aren't used to looking at it.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to do, your first box is always going to be your discipline, which I don't even think you guys might be able to pick that. You're going to do, your first number that you're putting in there is how many times you're going. So 3, you leave the next one blank unless you're going every other week. It should always just say 1. It will tell you like 3 times every 1 week for X amount of weeks. When you're going and doing your evals, I'm putting your first visit in. So it's already included in your frequency. So your eval, that first week that you're going, let's say you want to go 3 times a week, you're going to write for 2 times a week because I already let you go 1 time a week. So that's in your order already. Then you want to do your 3 times a week or however often you're going. And I think most of you guys, everything looks fine. It's just that first week.
So they have to do another row, right? They have to add frequency. Like, say you're going 3 times the first week and then 2 times and then 1 time.
And
You have
the
to
bottom-
add another row
So
each
when
time.
that pops up, when you click add frequency and it pops up, the bottom right of that pop-up says add more frequencies. You just click that and it'll give you a whole nother one to say 3 times a week for 4 weeks, 10 weeks.
This
whatever.
is how
when
Nicole-
you started too, like it says starting week 4, this date.
So when you're basically how I do this when I'm doing the schedules, I never look at what that start week is, that number that's in front of that week number. I don't know. I just click on the calendar. And I look
Change
and
your
remember
calendar
your
date.
calendar is Sunday to Saturday. So if whatever your eval is, you can't go backwards from that. So even though our weeks run Sunday to Saturday, if you eval on a Thursday, you're going to click Thursday. You can't go back to where you didn't even go. So you're going to start your eval there. You're going to do your frequency out to Saturday. Then your next week, I just click on the calendar. So Devero Auto does it for you. If you stop your frequency, let's say on the 3rd, and you click add more frequencies, your next frequency automatically will start on the 4th. It helps you, but if you want to adjust things, I just do the calendar, and then it automatically changes that start week 5 or whatever the hell.
So basically, each row is for a different number of visits per week.
Right.
3 times a week times 2 weeks, then next row, add frequency, 2 times a week. This is what Nicole always used to do for you on this end, but now the system opened up and it's allowing
You guys to do it.
you guys to do it when you do your eval. So you're putting your visits in right away, and they're in the calendar. If it's not authorized, you won't be able to put them in.
The only
right?
time that you're not going to see them in the calendar is if PTA LPN, because you guys can't select the user, because I have to know that you got to do supervisories. But I mean, if it's just you on a case like OT, you'll always pick yourself. You're never going to supervise Coda.
Yeah,
I
so
think that's as long as if you're the only one on the case, you can pick yourself. But if you're not, just let it sit the way it is. Put your frequency numbers in. No person though.
and Dawn asked about that eligibility section. The red eligibility on your notes, if you click on it, it has 3 different sections. Homebound, which has to be put on every single note. And the thing is, you don't have to retype it every time, because when you click on homebound, what you wrote before is going to come up. All you have to do is check it off and hit insert to form. But if it changed, you have to change it. You can hit add row and write the new homebound reason and just check that one
okay.
off and hit insert to form. Or you can just delete out, like highlight that and retype over it. If you hit add row, it'll just give you a whole new row with a blank to write in. So you'll have a history of their homebound reasons, and you can just click that one off. It gives you that so you can think about it and make the change, because if the homebound reason doesn't match up, like if you say they're mod assist for ambulation and your note says they're contact guard now and it doesn't match up, that's a red flag on audits. So you always have to make sure your homebound is the reason they're still homebound. If it's a cognitive issue that's always going to exist, use that. So you never have to change it. Use something that's always going to exist, if you can. If they're temporary, then use
It
temporary.
just makes sense to do that.
The other categories under that are recertification of eligibility and face-to-face. Face-to-face is office. Recertification of eligibility is only that eligibility paragraph that the people doing the Recert Oasis have to fill in. So for face-to-face, a warning's going to come out. It's going to say, you haven't done your face-to-face. Do you want to continue? Just hit OK and continue through it.
That's what I
You
did.
do not have to worry about face-to-face. If you're doing a recert, you need to click on that recertification of eligibility paragraph and put your recertification paragraph in for the next episode. You do have to do that.
Okay.
And those, I don't know why they put those all together like that. They should have kind of separated them, but
I think the way the COPs were laid out, it's
because the conditions of participation say these are the eligibility requirements.
Yep.
So that's right. They're labeling
they're
it
just going. Yep.
so that when they're looking at audits, did they meet all the eligibility requirements? Number 1, homebound. Number 2, recertification of eligibility. Number 3, face-to-face. That's right there in that box. If they don't meet those 3 requirements, the entire money from the entire chart, every single episode of that chart is taken.
What do
Yep.
we put down for face-to-face when it flashes up? Sorry.
Just hit OK, continue.
Okay.
Because the office
All right.
does that. The office
Gotcha.
takes care of that, puts a date in. They put the date that's in there.
Okay. Click okay.
So orders, just remember, you can't write duration of episode anymore. It has to be exact number of weeks, exact time that has to go in for the time frame on those. And I did notice on one of the forms, and we sent it into Devero, there wasn't a red to add visits. Remember I brought it up to you? One of the evals or one of the Oasises had like just a blank box. It didn't have the red add. I must have sent it to them. Yeah, I don't think I
I
told
think
you
you
that.
sent
Yeah,
it to
I sent it to them. I'm sending things as I find errors so they can reprogram, because there's a lot of programming that goes into it. And I am programming for the mandatory fields. So we sent that over to them yesterday. They should be adding the mandatory fields. So this way it'll pop up if you miss a field, and it'll tell you before you send them, because takes a very, very long time to look at every single note.
That's a
It's
big
very
help.
boring. Gray box is linked to the plan of care. I talked about that. Oh, and again, you might not be used to some of the things, but advanced directives, we have to add that on every plan of care now. It's part of the new conditions of participation. If they don't give you a DNR, they're a full code. I mean, bottom line. You can check off no advanced directive, full code, or just full code. I mean, that's what I've been doing. And a discharge plan has to be picked on every note, unfortunately, but it's going to save whatever they put as a discharge plan, but you have to check it off because as an eligibility requirement, they want to know that that discharge plan is the same or it changed, something changed about it. So they always want to know your discharge plan on every note now, which to me seems a little redundant, but that's what we have to do. The reassessment, no more reassessment addendum for therapy. It's all part of one note. So as you see the menus, I hope they're a little more clear. Nicole spent a lot of time restructuring all those menus back and
Trying
forth
to
on the
figure out all
phone.
your heads and figure
Right.
out how
She's like,
everybody's
how would
head
they
can work
think?
as one. It was scary.
Yeah. I mean, she spent a good deal of time back and forth on the phone with DeVero, explaining to them how we wanted the menu in so that people wouldn't forget, or with the forms and what
Make
needs
it
to go
as
in.
simple to understand as possible, and as much information so you're not saying, well, wait, I eval, but I'm not the first one. Just trying to make it simple as possible. So you guys should never have to ask me for another box. Not the supervisory. If it doesn't let you, it might let you.
And
Yeah.
resumption.
No more boxes.
On resumption, you'll be doing, so when you resume care after a facility, you'll be doing an eval.
Somebody asked me that the other day.
Right? So the 30-day reassessment still every 30 days, that reassessment note, but when they come home from the hospital, be an eval. So I think that's on the menus. That's pretty clear on the menus.
believe so, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the clearest thing
If-
on the menus,
We
but
can always revisit that. And look
we
at
can
it.
always put it in parentheses on the menu, like for resumption.
I think it
and
says
facility.
reassessment 30 days.
Yeah, reassessment says 30
30
days.
days. And
And
then
eval.
resumption.
And then eval if you're not the first in.
Correct.
So first
We
in
might
would do
have
the
to add
resumption of care
another-
Oasis. Everybody else would do their evals.
Yeah, I think I have to add another spot.
I think.
It? Way more.
On a patient, is it going to be visible to?
When you do what?
If the patient has a DNR, where can we see it?
So under the advanced directives, it will be in the plan of care. So everybody is going to have to choose the advanced directive on the plan of care, and all you have to do is glance at the latest plan of care. Now, you're going to see multiple plans of care in the chart now, because the thing is, every time that they have to fax orders to the doctor, they have to update the plan, or you're not doing. Go ahead.
So every time
We're still.
the physician order comes through, we have to look at it and decide: is it something that's really altering the care plan, or is
Right.
it something that's just we're making a change? Somewhere?
Just a walker or whatever.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not. I'm not going to send a whole new plan of care if you guys just want a walker. So.
Right. And not
I wanna
sending,
say-
just doing an update so that
Right.
it's in there.
So, exactly. So, if it's a big change happening, we have to close. The plan of care was once a completed document. You couldn't touch it, you couldn't move it, you couldn't do anything with it. It now stays as a pending document like your med profile does. So, it's ever changing and always flowing and moving. You guys aren't seeing what we can see. So when you guys need to see a major change happening, we have to generate a whole new plan of care, which means you're going to see completed ones and you're going to see a pending one. The pending one is always the one that you want to view. That's the most recent, up to date with the most orders in it.
And it'll have the most recent date on it.
Correct. It'll have the most recent date, and I'm not sending them to the doctor
No.
unless if we pull. The problem is we're sending a physician order already to the doctor. Then we're going to send them a plan of care with the
No.
same thing on it. It doesn't make sense. So
60 days,
essentially,
I think,
what
is
we'd like
fine.
to see is the plan of care just being generated every 60 days. Start of care and every 60 days. Of course, if there's reason that we need to update it, we will. But
For example, like Jim said, if he does a wound care order
We're gonna
he wants to
update.
see that reflected on the plan of care, because if he clicks on the plan of care, then he's going to see the most updated wound care order in there at all times.
Right.
So the nurses will all be on the same page with what they're doing in wound care. You know, that's pretty much good. Yeah, I guess I can introduce Bruce now. So one of the conditions is emergency
it's gonna be boring.
preparedness.
First, I just want to make sure everybody gets one of these. I just put something quick together because I knew we didn't have a lot of time. My name's Bruce. I own BC Fire Protection. I just put it
Nice
all
to
together.
meet you.
Put
Thank you.
I'm Cindy's husband. So this is the first time she's going to listen to me without telling me to shut up.
Thank you.
So in here, I just
Look, this is yours.
if anybody doesn't have one. In here, I just put together a couple quick things for your emergency preparedness and stuff with your patients. There's a lot of things you guys are going to see that I couldn't even explain or go over. But there was a patient that happened to be on the 10th floor of a building, a high rise. If there's something that happens in that building when you're there, you got to know how to get the patient out. If that's your job to get them out of there. The clinician wasn't quite sure what to do. The patient can't walk that far. You can't use the elevator. So you have to find different ways of getting people out. Just so happens this building also, where the clinician goes into, is not where you come out of the building if there's an emergency. They don't let you go to the main lobby. They take you out on the second level floor, which unless you know the building you're in, you wouldn't know that. So that's something you have to prepare yourself for. The main thing with anything you do is being prepared. You don't want to learn how to use a fire extinguisher when there's a fire. You want to already know it. You don't want to know how to evacuate your home or pick your kids up at school if something bad happens. You want to have a plan in place. So for all your patients, some of the planning should be a contact phone number of somebody. Again, I guess you guys have designated people, contact people you can call. But if there's an emergency here, power outage, whatever, you may want, or in their area, they don't live in the same neighborhood you do. Something happened there and they had to leave their home. You got to know where they're going, where their plans are going, whether to get there or not. And a contact, maybe somebody even out of the area that's family related that would know where they're at, because otherwise you won't know where they're at. You won't, they could still be in their home. You won't know. So there's a lot of things you guys have to look at that way. I'm sure you guys do a lot of visits in the afternoon and the evenings when they're cooking. That's 90% of the time when there's a fire in home. That's when it happens, during cooking. So you want to be aware of your surroundings. You want to know where your exits are. You want to know, again, if the patient can't go up and down steps, a secondary way of getting them down steps. If you're there by yourself, it's difficult, but there are ways of doing it. Take one of their blankets, lay it on the floor, lay them on the floor, tie it around their feet, and hold them up by their head and slowly slide them down like a sliding board down the steps. Not the best way, but you keep their head safe, slide them down the steps, you got to get them out. In here also, I just put a couple different things they all start with the same thing. Plannings for just about any disaster all start with them having a kit. If they have an oxygen machine, you want to make sure they have something portable if they have to get out of their building. Wheelchairs, if they're batteries, you want to make sure they have chargers or batteries. And just go over that with them. That they have to have if they have medication, they should have the medications they need available. Because if they have to go to somebody else's house, they're not going to go home and get their stuff. Also, again, knowing your exits out of the buildings. Whatever building you go into, I'm sure you're going into centers you go there, they got to ring a buzzer to get you in. Some of them you have to have a code to get out. I know a lot of the nursing homes, you have to have a code to get out of the doors. Not knowing the code, not such a bad thing in a nursing home, that'll set the alarms off. But in a secured residential neighborhood, it won't set an alarm off, but you won't be able to get out. So knowing the codes is something you need to know in that situation. Being prepared for a lot of different things, such as knowing your patient, if they're cognitive enough to do anything, if they have a fire extinguisher, if it's a useful fire extinguisher, if they have a smoke alarm, if their smoke alarms are properly in the right areas. It's all stuff you need to know, because when you're in that home, their house, their facility, you have to know how to get out. And so also in here I put just a couple print-ups. Patient planning for emergencies for homebound healthcare patients, and then just some quick things I just printed up for your time to read. Couple acronyms: PASS. I'm sure you all know PASS. Pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. Race. It's all simple things that you should know. And in a fire, as you're leaving a building, you want to make sure you close the doors behind you. I don't know if anybody had seen that fire that was just over in Jersey, in an apartment above a store. Happened in a lady's apartment. A 3-year-old child played with the stove, started a fire. She left her door open. Quite a few people died in that building because the fire was easily able to get out of her apartment. Don't lock the doors, but make sure they're closed behind you. And again, with race, rescue, that you want to try to get anybody out of there you can. Don't put yourself at risk. If you can't get them out, get them somewhere where they'll be safe enough for you to contact someone, a fireman, police, somebody there, EMT, that could go in and do that job. You're not going to be the end all for that. But you have to, basically, again, if you're in a building, you have to know where your emergency pull stations are for fire alarms. In a fire, from the time that alarm goes off, you have about 120 seconds, which is a little longer than I just talked, to get out safely. After 120 seconds, the place is fully engulfed, and at that point, you are very much at risk. So, and if you're within 120 seconds and can't get out of somebody's place, if you're in an apartment, in a house, seal the door in front of you. Make sure it stays shut. Make sure your patient's in the room with you. Go to a window. Let somebody know. Call the fire marshal. Let them know what apartment you're in, what floor you're on, what side of the building, if you know. And that's really all you can do. Stay low in a fire. You want to stay low because smoke kills more people than you would think. And heat. But for some of your other stuff, like I said, for like a natural emergency, you have to have contact numbers. You have to have a next door neighbor that might be willing to go over and check on a patient. Not that you know all their neighbors, and nor you probably don't want to. But if your job is to make sure they're safe, or even if you're going there and you're calling them and they don't answer, you have to have somebody else to call to find out why they're not, especially if they're homebound, why they're not answering. Whether it's a family member, and somebody on that contact list, now that they upgraded to a whole new list, you probably have a lot more contacted people that you don't want to talk to, but you're going to have to. So there's so many different facets of what you guys are doing. When you go into someone's home, if they're a hoarder, if they're just plain sloppy, that's not up to you to decide what they're doing, but you have to make sure that there's a clear pathway out. And if there's 2 doorways out or a window, if something happens there, you have to know, if it's at that door, you have to know there's another door on the other side of the house. So you should know where that's at for your safety and your patient's safety. There's just so many different things you guys, I'm sure, have come across, and you have to document some of it. But there's things that your patient needs to know. You have to let your patient know that if they are going somewhere, you need a contact number. Because if you have to contact them, or again, if you have a visit and they're not home, you need to know where they're at, what's going on. They may be in the hospital. That's, but you would have to find out. So on that behalf, I mean, it could be something a family member would know, or I guess if you have the legal aspects of it, the legal contact person. So there's just a lot of variables in everything you do. Weather, snow, if you're supposed to go somewhere and there's snow and you get to their house and it's snowed in. Not that it's your job to shovel the driveway or sidewalks, but you also got to be safe going in and getting out. Other than that, like I said, there's quite a few different print-ups because I knew I wasn't going to have a lot of time, and we could talk about disasters forever or plans, but definitely you have to, as one of your meetings, discuss with your patients their medications, if they have stuff set aside, if they have to leave, or if they're going on vacation. You guys got to be aware of that.
Bruce, I was thinking maybe if each of them carried a folder in their bag like this, and then just on their visit, their PRN visit that they do this on, to just kind of flip through it and go over whatever's applicable to that specific patient, and then just jot it in their book.
Yeah,
Take
well,
a picture of it.
that's what I'm saying. You had a patient in a high-rise building, and it's a total different way going in than it is coming out. Although on the back of the patient's door, which was good to know, but unless you know it, you wouldn't know it. There was a whole list of, in an emergency, what that patient's to do. On every floor of this high-rise, it had a general on every floor that if you can't get out of the building, let the person in charge of the floor know. And then they gave you directions of what to do, which was a good idea. But it's on the back of their entry door. You don't generally look at the back of the door on your way out. You want to get out. You want to get home.
So if we're in a place like that that already has those instructions, would we be able to just document in our plan of care that the apartment complex already has instructions
Yes.
for that?
And that's the other thing. If you do go into something of that nature, I do suggest if you see a maintenance guy or somebody that works there, ask them because they have different alarm sounds. Most of them, almost all your high rises have sprinkler systems, which is great. But again, you have a lot of staircases. If you have a patient that can only walk, 15 feet, and you got to go down 8, 10, 12 flights of steps, you're going to need help. Or you're going to need a different plan. And the other plan may be just what the building has in place. And as I said, just one building that I'm aware of. When you come out in an emergency, the elevators don't run, and when you come down at the steps, you're on the second level. They have a total separate exit off the second level in the back of the building that unless you knew the building, you would not know it was there. So it's always good to get to know your surroundings, get to know your ways out, and don't just make one way out. Always have two. In school, every time they did the fire alarms for school students, they'd have the students line up and follow the teacher quietly down the hall and out the door and go around the school to the flagpole. Great idea, unless the fires where you've been teaching these kids to walk to, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade. If that happens to be where the fire's at, you're going to have 30 or 40 or 3 or 4 classrooms of kids, 120 kids, going crazy, and you're not going to be able to take care of that as a teacher, as a teacher's aide. So having two ways out and knowing where your hazards are. Also, if you're in a building and you hear the alarms going on, don't just open the door to try to go out. Feel the door at the back of your hand. Not your palms, because your palms aren't as sensitive. The back of your hand, you'll feel the warmth. If that door's warm, don't even try to go out. Try to seal it up. Try to get somewhere else in there and make sure you let whoever know where you're at. The fire department, 911. 911 is an alternative plan. Sheltering in place is an alternative plan. During like a storm or a bad thunderstorm, lightning storm, flooding, sheltering in place may be what you're required to do. So listening to the radio is also a good idea, or the TV, because you'll get the alerts. Other than that, there's so many different things you can come into. This could go on forever. But what it is, I put a business card in your folders. If you have any questions, you can give me a call. If you have any specifics or anything you want to know a little more about specifically pertaining to an area you're going, give me a call and I can see what I can find out for you. Every township's a little different too with their codes and requirements. So there's no way of knowing from Southampton to Bensalem to Bristol what the requirements are. And they're all going to be a little different. So, but it's basically for your safety and the patient's safety to have your plan. Don't plan it when it's happening because that's too late. That's when you're going to panic. If there's a fire, you don't want to pick up a fire extinguisher and read it to see how to use it. You want to know first. If your home's on fire, you don't want to just get out. You also have to have a meeting place. Somewhere, not, let's meet out at my van. Well, what happens if you have to park down that street? No one is where you park. You set up a designated place that isn't going to move.
And I think it's good that we add this on the all review thing for the plan of care too, like the vital signs, the emergency planning, the medication management. Everybody's doing it, so we should, put it on there because we're not allowed to educate a patient on something if it's not on the plan of care. So if they see you educating a patient about something and they're going to look at the plan of care and it's not on there, you're cited
Why?
because it's not on your plan. You
And
shouldn't
it-
educate them on anything that's not on your plan.
So do we have to educate them on an escape?
We have to
Wow.
educate them on emergency
We have
management,
to-
yes. Every single patient, and it has to be in the chart. It has to be in the plan of care.
Is
Every
this gonna-
discipline?
Well, the case manager, again, is in charge of that. And they should, like I said, there's 2 pages, and I put it in the weekly, there's 2 pages in the workbook, our admission book, that has spots where you fill out all their emergency numbers, and then 2 pages after that, it's their little plan. You write that in, take a picture of it, upload it to the chart. That satisfies our condition, but it's gotta be in every chart. They're gonna check every chart.
Oh, wow.
And if the plan is, this person is completely homebound and I've educated them that if something happens, they need to call 911, that's your plan, but you have to have something there,
Okay.
you know?
So it's usually done on the eval again, the
Well,
opening, but it
the
could
first
Sometimes
follow-
it takes a while to get all that
First week, yeah. I mean,
information.
if you
It follows
It really
the
does.
education.
It's not that
but-
easy.
okay.
But if you're not, I mean, if you wait a month and we get a survey within that month and it's not there, we're in trouble.
And the other good thing,
Okay.
the other thing to have too that may be good for you guys is a secondary phone number other than their main contact, somebody out of the area, somebody maybe in another state that's family related that can contact them. Because if they do, something happens, they do go to a hospital or shelter, if it's in their area, you're not going to be able to get a hold of their other contact anyway. So contacting somebody out of the area that's related to them, that they give you the okay. The other thing is, like she was saying too, with your training, you got to train them with what you know and what you're safe with. Me at my job, 99% of what I do is fire extinguishers. Mattress Giant, one of the companies that I serviced, if you use a fire extinguisher during a fire in their building, they fire you. They tell you not to touch them. You should only use a fire extinguisher if you're comfortable with it. Other than that, you get out and dial 911 and let the fire department do what they got to do. So trying to train your patient with a fire extinguisher, it's pretty simple. Maybe a bad thing because if they do something wrong, they say, that's what they told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a client asking me about their smoke detectors. It says in here, test them twice a year. I would not test anybody's smoke detectors but my own for a couple reasons. One, they could be hardwired into an alarm through the whole building. I test this one, the whole building's alarms go off, and guess what? The fire marshal and the fire department will
Those are all
be
your
here,
answers when
and they
they
won't be
survey you.
happy. And they won't be happy. So in my home, I know all my smoke detectors are separate. They're by themselves. I installed them straight out of Home Depot. They're by themselves, so I can test each one. That's fine. But if I test one here, I was at a physical therapy office, and the guy asked me to test a smoke detector that was like 16 feet in the air. I told him I couldn't do it. I didn't have a ladder to get to it. So he said, well, how can I test it? It's beeping. I said, well, it probably needs a battery. I said, is it alarmed? He said, no. 3 times he told me it wasn't alarmed. I put them in. I said, okay, well, then what I suggest, when you get a chance, get a ladder, come in and press the button. Well, that night, he was done his patients a little early. He climbed up on a chair with the broomstick and reached up and pushed the button, and the alarms went off. The whole building went off. After about 5 minutes, they stopped. He's getting changed, getting ready to leave. Fire department shows up out front of his building. Know what he says? Bruce told me to do that. So then fire marshal's calling me up to find out why I'm instructing this guy to test his smoke detectors that are on an alarm system. I didn't instruct him to do that, and I did tell him, he told me they were all separate. The fire marshal don't care. They want somebody to pay for that false alarm.
They want somebody to blame.
Yeah, and,
Right.
and if they can blame you, they can make you pay for the false alarm. And it's not cheap.
Right.
And if it happens several times, it can be very expensive. So in here, there is something about smoke detectors. I would disregard the smoke detectors unless you know. Now, if they're beeping, they're in an apartment complex, suggest that they have maintenance change the batteries.
There's a question on the OASIS that asks,
Yeah,
are the smoke
right.
detectors
So, you know.
operating?
They used to be, now, I mean, they don't even have to be hardwired anymore. A lot of new ones are wireless. So if I press this one and she has one in the basement, one upstairs, and one next door, they all go off at the same time. You can get them in your home that way. You can get them in your home where they'll talk to your kids, tell your kids, don't panic, get up, follow our plan.
I'm going to ask Joint Commission about this tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if you test that smoke detector and
That'd
it's
be
alarmed,
smart.
and even if there's other tenants in the building, it might have been all one unit, so they're all just connected together. Now there's a wall. Now there's another business over there. You test that alarm, theirs is going to go off also. When their clients over at the door, they're going to come to you and say, I just lost $1,000 worth of work because you did the alarms.
I'll
Again,
send the bill to Joint Commission.
yeah, another. So smoke detectors are very. I did put a paper in there for the smoke detectors.
Who would think?
That's one of the ones you really gotta. I wouldn't do it personally. I don't test smoke detectors for that reason. Shopping center, same thing. Apartments, most of your apartments, they are hardwired. They're alarmed. So if your apartment's going off, everybody in that building is going to get a notification that there's a fire. And would be great. You sitting there with your patient. Look, watch, it works. Deet, 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 and it stops, and you're doing what you want. And as you're leaving, everybody's out front going, "What's going on?" Oh, I don't know what's going on. So.
Do you like those? I've seen those baking soda things you hang on your stove, and it comes down.
They're kind of interesting. I did. Cindy sent me the link that you sent her, and I did go on and I looked for them, and they're reasonably cheap.
Do they work?
That show they work. Their web page
Baking
work
soda
great.
explodes when the flame hits it, and you hang it from your
But
stove.
if it doesn't work, it would be our fault if we.
It's
Right.
it's a metal. What she's talking about, there's these metal trays you can hang above your stove on a cabinet or at the bottom of a microwave.
Right? That whole system.
Well, now these are a little different. These are just little metal cans
Oh, okay.
that are like the size of
Sounds like a
tuna fish
Home Depot.
cans.
Gotcha, little.
That just slide on these two little metal racks that have heat sensors on them. If you're cooking something with oil and the heat sensor gets hot enough, it'll melt,
Okay.
and it lets the gate drop. When it drops, it pulls the tab open and it dumps baking soda all over your stove. Not a big deal. It's easy to clean up after it's done. If your husband's coming home for dinner or you're coming home for dinner, you could use that for excuse why it's not done. But I wouldn't put much faith into them. I've never really seen one person to person. If you in your home, you should have at least one fire extinguisher. You should have a smoke detector in every one of your rooms, not your kitchen. Even though that's where most of your fires start, but
I've set them off in other rooms cooking, so.
yeah. So I mean, the smoke detectors I'd stay away with. There is something in your thing. I would stay away from them. If your patients have a fire extinguisher, you may want to sit down and just review the extinguisher with them, where it's at, and good for you to know also while you're there. But you should also have one in your home for your own safety.
Well, thank you, Bruce. I think we all learned a lot. And I'm going to be available for the next half hour if anybody has any more questions about conditions of participation or notes. I mean, I personally think they're going to be easier once we get used to them. Of course, it's a learning curve, but they are custom forms. So, I mean, not custom, they are standard forms. So we had nothing to do with what's on those forms. They are the ones from the we're not changing them. So, did everybody get something to eat? There's a lot of food.
Under the gold tab.
I did, Scalen's open. I don't know why,
We'll end up.
I put it on for 3 times a week.